Hi, this is Professor Andrew Gardner. Welcome to another installment of my pandemic stuck at home lecture series. The title of my presentation and lecture today is A Window to Urban Arabia, and it's a presentation that sort of attempts to coalesce some of my fascination and interests with cities and urbanism, and particularly the urbanisms that I've encountered on the Arabian Peninsula. In case I did forget to introduce myself, my name is Professor Andrew Gardner. I'm a cultural anthropologist, professor of anthropology at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. And like all of these lectures, I do like to start with an abstract that provides a brief sort of overview of my intentions for these lectures. And so in this presentation, I'm really going to be presenting more of an exhibit. It's an art exhibit that showed at Bluebeard Coffee briefly and in part before the pandemic closed it down here in Tacoma, Washington. And so this exhibit is an accumulation of images that collectively seek to provide viewers with a window into Doha, Qatar, and therefore into the urban heart of the modern Middle East. In tandem with a changing set of images arranged in sequential acts, the exhibit includes a pastiche of text to guide the viewer's experience. That text, which I'll read here, includes the overarching exhibit statement, as well as brief abstracts or summaries that encompass each of the first three acts. In the final accounting, the collection is intended as an ode to the city itself, an objective that's conveyed primarily through the images that I'll present here. And so we'll look at a few of these images a little bit longer as I sort of roll through this single page of text that provides an overview to the entirety of this set, and then we'll move into the abstracts that summarize each of the three sequential acts that comprise the exhibit. So Doha is both an astounding and confounding city. A century ago, it was a sleepy and sweltering seaside village perched on the shores of the Persian Gulf. The small port was a minor regional hub, inhabited by a seafaring merchant class, by Bedouin pastoral nomads, and by a miscellany of others. The discovery of vast reservoirs of natural gas and the technological capacity to condense and liquefy that gas for shipment, and a small population of citizens resulted in one of the wealthiest places on earth. So very much of that wealth is plowed back into the city itself. The city grows ceaselessly by leaps and bounds, by new zones and new districts, by islands and peninsulas reclaimed from the sea. Construction never ceases. Fueled by labor and capital, the city continually renews itself. Building and operating this cosmopolitan entrepot required workers and expertise not indigenous to the small peninsula. As a result, the more than 300,000 citizens have been a minority in their own country for many decades now. 9 of every 10 residents in contemporary Doha are temporary migrants. The resulting city is extraordinarily diverse in ways that stretch the American conceptualization of that term. Inequality is stark throughout the city. The city is impressively safe. Altogether, Doha and its urban neighbors present an urban modernity without clear parallels in North America. It's this urban modernity that enthralls and attracts millions of migrants from the Indian Ocean world and beyond. I am also transfixed. This exhibit consists of several sequential acts. Each one includes approximately 12 images and some explanatory text, which together provide an angle on urban modernity in Arabia, a vantage point, a glimpse from afar, a fragment of a busy cosmopolitan hub that always stretches beyond my ability to capture or encapsulate. Proceed thoughtfully and beware of the American tendency for simplification or essentialization. What you see and how you read these photos might have more to do with your American baggage than the city and its inhabitants. And so, without further ado, I'll turn to the first of the three sequential collections of photographs, or what I'm calling acts. And Act 1 is entitled Modernist Textures. The first act comprises a granular and aesthetic exploration of modernism in Doha through a visual consideration of the different textures of the eroding modernism found at the aging city center. The buildings and neighborhoods from which these images come were once the bright and modernist epicenter of the mid-century city. Architecture, design, and textures emblematic of progress, of growth, of a modernity from elsewhere, and of the reliable uniformity of industrial production. As it did in other countries, modernism promised a departure from the past. Now, the eroding remnants of futures past, these neighborhoods were first abandoned by citizens in their migration to the suburbs, and then inhabited by the burgeoning legion of South Asian labor migrants who toil in the city. Although some of these latter inhabitants still reside in these aging structures, bulldozers steadily encroach on the weathered core of the city and stand poised on the margins of these neighborhoods. The urban core is to be rebuilt again with steady infusions of capital and by foreign hands. The second act of this exhibit is entitled Proletarian Enclaves. And this second and third act actually never made it to the walls of the cafe because of the pandemic. But again, this one's called Proletarian Enclaves. The second act of the exhibit explores the peripheral urban enclaves where much of the foreign workforce dwells. These workers, most of whom come from South Asia, both build and service the modern city. Although a few stragglers still dwell in the urban core of Doha, most migrant workers now occupy enclaves constructed at the periphery of the city. In the life worlds of these men and women, these migrations are, for the most part, an economic necessity for the households behind them. These migrations also serve as a rite of passage and comprise a great and difficult adventure that is sometimes rewarding. These cities, like the one you see here, are far from home for the millions of migrant men and women who inhabit them, and are simultaneously the setting for the social drama of their lives. The third and last, in this case, act of this exhibit is entitled Starchitecture. And without further ado, we can look at some of these images now. The third act or exhibit was very much in process, and thanks to the global pandemic, never made it to the wall. Entitled Starchitecture, these images seek to portray the attention-grabbing constructions of the world's most respected and most prized architects. For them, Qatar is an ideal client with money to spend and with little to crowd or adjust their respective visions. Provided for them is the tabula rasa from which their creations might emerge. In one sense, the city is like a gargantuan trophy case to the citizenry and to the leadership who steward a vision of modernity designed mostly by foreigners. And so that concludes my visual essay lecture for the day. In case anyone's curious, most of the photographs that you see here were taken with with my Fuji X100F, a camera that I purchased on the excellent advice of my friend, Dr. Yasser El-Shashtawi. And anyway, I hope you like this. I welcome any comments, suggestions, or critiques that you have. And thanks for your time and attention.